InvestorIdeas.com podcasts.
Good afternoon and welcome to another InvestorIdeas.com podcast following cannabis news and stocks to watch. Today we have one of our on-site interviews from the Extraordinary Future Conference hosted by CambridgeHouse International. The two-day conference held in Vancouver, BC on September 19th and 20th featured the hottest Canadian technology info for investors, showcasing everything from esports to blockchain, cannabis, electric cars, and security. Today's interview is with Rob Hill, the CFO of Emerald Health Therapeutics, trading on the TSXV under the symbol EMH. Earlier this month, Village Farms International, trading on the TSX as VFF, and Emerald Health Therapeutics, trading on the TSX Venture as EMH, announced that their 50-50 joint venture for large-scale, low-cost, high-quality cannabis production, Pure Sunfarms, received from Health Canada its Fourth Amendment to the cultivation license for its Delta 3 greenhouse in Delta, BC. This amendment permits Pure Sunfarms to expand its cannabis production area to 550,000 square feet, half the 1.1 million square feet Delta production facility. I caught up with Rob at the Extraordinary Future Conference to discuss their Delta facility and the cannabis market as a whole.
Rob Hill, I'm the CFO of Emerald Health Therapeutics. We trade on the Venture Exchange in Toronto under EMH. We're a licensed producer under the AMCPR regulations currently. We sell to the medical market in Canada. We're headquartered in Victoria. We've got a grow facility, which is a joint venture arrangement with a company called Village Farms, and the name of that joint venture is Pure Sunfarms. It's located in Delta. It's a 1.1 million square foot facility. It's under...
I'd like to get into that actually right away there, just because that's one of the things I was wondering about with Village Farms. You're just one of the first people that I've heard getting people from the agriculture community into the cannabis industry, because I know that most of them are staying away just because of yield production and cost production. But cannabis is a much more confined growth opportunity. What got them in the sector, and what do you see the potential for you guys in having that background?
What got Village Farms into the sector was the fact that tomatoes are a low-margin business. I think they are very good at growing, and they compete with the Mexicans, but it's a 5% margin. It's a low single-digit game. And so when the opportunity cannabis came in, the thinking was that's going to be a much higher margin business, just based on the strict math. Like cannabis sells for $8 a gram, and then maybe it'll drip down a little bit, but it's going to be selling for, generally speaking, 5 to 8 or whatever that number is. And yet they think they can grow it for $1 or less per gram, and so there's pretty good margin. You have to factor in packaging. But for Village Farms, suddenly they've got a new crop that can be super high margin. And so from Emerald's side of that, we've been growing cannabis in Victoria for 4 years, but it's on a 3,000 square foot facility. And we knew that to be a real relevant player in this market post legalization,
larger scale,
we got to get to scale. And so that was so how do we do that, right? We could go and build a greenhouse. They're not that crazy expensive to build, but the real risk is how do we go from growing in a 3,000 tiny little, that's the size of somebody's house, to something that's 19 football fields large. And there's so much complexity. And if we thought that we were going to be able to do that all by ourselves, I think we were foolish. So we took the sane approach, and we connected with Village Farms. So now we've got a fantastic grower, large scale. They don't know much about cannabis, but we do. And we also
understand greenhouse facilities.
Greenhouse, so it's a perfect match, right? And they have fantastic resources, tremendous experience in that site for 20 years in Delta, 30 years overall growing. So
are you noticing any issues with quality control with expanding to that size?
Well, inevitably there's going to be learning. If anybody, by the way, who tells you that it's all singing and dancing in their greenhouse,
no one tells me that.
The truth is, it's a business. There's Mother Nature's involved. You've got plants that are being grown in environments that have never been grown like that, like a greenhouse facility in this location. So inevitably there are bumps in the road. But again, getting back to the value of having an experienced grower, and as well us with our experienced grow team and scientists and things. So we are learning, and we're finding the issues, and we're remedying them and pushing ahead. I think it's about as quickly as anybody could hope. We're really quite satisfied with how things
I mean, not really technical, but just into a different side of that perspective. Because you guys are planning that Vancouver facility, which is going to be massive. Are you guys considering, just because I know it's a big thing, I actually talked with someone earlier this morning about the pesticides in the States, and obviously the quality control, and that if you get pesticide pollution into one plant, it can spread to the other plants quite massively, especially with larger facilities. what are you guys looking into for control factors for that? Or
well, I think it's a function of who your neighbors are. You better know your neighbors, and if they're using pesticides and you're in a greenhouse environment, you've got to be very careful about how that's controlled. And then within a greenhouse, and this goes for pests, well, not so much pesticides, but for pathogens, you have to have sectors. So you have sort of like, if one sector goes down, you're not going to lose your whole million square foot greenhouse.
What sort of sectors are you guys building into? Or
just walls.
No, I just mean like size, yield capacities.
I'm not the best guy to ask. I mean, I've
no
seen
worries,
it. I can't even tell you how.
So that's totally fine. And then obviously, just because you're a person who's already had experience dealing with flour versus oil, where are you seeing the sales move towards? Is flour still stronger than oil?
It will be, and I think it's...
especially with the recreational use. There's a lot of debate about that.
But, I think that the reason why so much of it out of the gates, I think we're thinking it's going to be 80% flour out of the gate, but I don't think that's necessarily a function of people's preferences as much as it is that's what's available. There's not many, we're one of the few guys that extract. And extraction for us is a big part of the formula. We've seen in the States, as extraction capabilities and capacities have gone up, you see this migration there. So again, is it because people want it? Or is it because people wanted to smoke flower and they don't? Or is it because that's all they've got? If they want to be in the cannabis game, they've got to smoke it.
And then with your guys' CBD oils and THC oils, taste and smell, how much is that a factor for you guys, or what are you doing to maybe limit some of that?
It depends on the application, right? So ultimately, we are in the business of gel caps, in which case taste and smell will be a non-factor. That has a very sort of therapeutic angle to it. So people that they just want to treat some indication, pain.
Yeah, I was thinking more for like the tinctures and oils that you said you could spread onto toast or something like that, right? Obviously,
and then that becomes more important. They want a pleasant taste, and if you have just a pure plant extract, it can have quite a pungent taste.
Well, that's what most people complain about.
So we actually have a great R&D program going on in around extraction. We're looking at different types of extraction, cold ethanol, and various other sort of proprietary means. So we're able to strip out a lot of the muck, so to speak, that sort of gives it that pungent flavor. And you get a much more pure extract. You maintain the terpene and the cannabinoid profiles that actually make it a fairly effective but more pleasant experience.
And then just one quick last thing, because I don't want to take all your time all day, but just because I know for you, even doing the introduction of cannabis, people are still wary or unknowledgeable of the sector. How are you finding the investor market investor or consumer market as far as their knowledge and understanding of the industry? Again, I think you made the joke of sort of, it's the 25-year-old kid smoking pot in the basement.
Well, the reality is that's a very, very small part of the market. Even today in the medical.
I just meant more as far as investor knowledge. Is it still quite low?
Investor knowledge is no, I wouldn't say that. I think there are a ton of people that I meet when I'm in the States and in Canada talking about it who are very knowledgeable about it. They fully understand the potential and power of other cannabinoids aside from THC, which has a psychotropic effect, but CBD. People ask me all the time about CBD, so they get it. And they get that there's tremendous potential to expand on drugs like GW Pharma introduced to treat epilepsy in kids. People are becoming more and more aware of it. And it'll just increase. It's one of the great things about what's happening in Canada right now, because the education effect, all the LPs like us, we're very focused on corporate social responsibility, educating, healthy practices, and so Canada will, as a nation, learn, and then as a nation, will lead the rest of the world and help everybody else follow. So the world's looking to Canada to really chart the path here, I think.
That's what we're all hoping, right? That it's going to get to that. The consumer knowledge is the biggest thing, so people understand that there are so many other benefits and what the actual differences in CBD, THC, and all the sort of variables even within those. Thanks so much for talking with me.
That's all for today's podcast. Podcast is now a certified word trademark on the blockchain through Cognate Incorporated CM certification. And InvestorIdeas.com podcasts are also available on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play Music, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, and TuneIn. If you'd like to be a guest or sponsor of this podcast, please contact InvestorIdeas.com. And Investor Ideas reminds all listeners to read our disclaimers and disclosures on the InvestorIdeas.com website. This podcast is not an endorsement to buy products or services or securities. Investors are reminded that all investments involve risk and possible loss of investment. I caught up with Rob at the Extraordinary Future Conference to discuss their Delta facility and the cannabis market as a whole.